Which came first?
Comedian, filmmaker.
Was the dream special NBA player?
Somewhere along the line, you have a choice.
You were very genuine.
I always had 1 foot in, 1 foot out.
Why you wanted to make this project?
This is like the largest minority group in the world.
That's, to me, what racism is. Cultural differences.
100%, such an honor. Joe speaks very highly of you. I've been following your social media, so know a lot about you too. We have some mutual friends, mutual contacts.
Yeah, dude. Oh my God, I am.
Oh no.
That's all good.
Technical malfunction, guys.
That one right there. You know what? That's why we have BTS, folks.
Hold
You're
on, here we
looking
go.
right
No, they
now
love it.
at a
Yeah, show
real
it.
life malfunction that's being corrected.
I'm gonna add Sparks and After Effects.
Let's go.
All right. So yeah, we're back. What's up? What's going on? So Big NEM, tell the audience about who you are before we get into it.
Big Nem, I'm a large man, and I'm 6'9", still breastfeeding. That's my secret. Extra calcium. Gets kind of weird after the age of 3, but nothing, man. I'm a comedian, filmmaker, kind of like a polyglot. Definitely an artist of some sorts, but the realm that I live in is kind of comedy, writer, director mainly. So
Nice.
yeah.
Nice.
Which came first, comedian or filmmaker?
They kind of both happen in tandem because my parents are from former Yugoslavia. We escaped the war. We're from Belgrade, Serbia, and then basically we came here. My parents lost everything, started from scratch, went from middle class to lower class in Canada, and then basically my dad was an arts journalist in Yugoslavia and Serbia, and basically he started the Toronto Serbian Film Fest, which Joe came out the other day to see the film.
That's awesome.
And they my pops put on my film, which was nice. It was a good way to like get a exclusive screener out before the movie's out. But I was raised with like movies, and then my dad has a goofy sense of humor. Mm-hmm. He's kind of like a Zeppelin head hippie.
Nice.
But he was also an arts journalist and a geopolitics journalist. So like I've had a lot of like
Geopolitics.
yeah, all this stuff in the background growing up as a kid. So I was kind of like a class clown from the get-go. It might have been some way to distract myself from generational trauma. Mm-hmm. But I think it developed also on like some spiritual level where it was just like, I don't know, where I was always the class clown. And then it just turned into a thing. I ended up being a basketball player, but even in the locker rooms, I'd always be the one
Shooting the shit.
yeah, cracking jokes and making a fool of myself. And then eventually that became my career. So
Let's pause and talk about the basketball for a bit. Yeah, man. So I did a little background check on you in the basketball world, and it's pretty cool, man. I played a little sports, almost got somewhere. But
what'd you play?
Baseball.
Yeah?
and wrestle. I was very, very, very good. I beat everybody in my state.
Yeah,
Everyone that was
in
important.
wrestling.
Yeah, everyone was important. Yeah.
Nice.
And so it's just really cool, and seeing basketball, wrestling is two separate things. You have a team, but you're by yourself. Basketball's a team. So like teammates, is it any like notable teammates you played with in the past?
Probably my most successful teammate. I trained with like a buddy of mine is Dwight Powell in the Mavericks. Let's go.
Oh, so
Mavericks. Let's go.
yeah.
Basically, I've trained with a lot of stars. Probably my strongest teammate was at Chicago State, Dave Holston. Mm-hmm. He was, so we were like a small mid-major school, D1 school, NCAA, Chicago State. And basically, he was like listed at 5'8", 5'9", but it's a bit shorter.
Yeah.
And he was the second leading scorer in all of Division I sports after the legendary Stephen Curry.
No way.
Wow.
So, this 5'6" kid from like a random unknown historical black college that we went to from Pontiac, Michigan, ended up being, and he didn't even get a scholarship because he was short. He had to work as a walk-on, ends up becoming the second leading scorer in the nation. we had NBA scouts at all of our practices, all of our games. Unfortunately, you know, he didn't make it, but he's a EuroLeague champion. He's making millions of euros still. He's like in his late 30s, still playing, still hooping.
Yeah.
And, you know, he played just like Steph Curry. Like he would pull from anywhere and just like quick. Can I swear in here?
Yeah.
Quick as fuck.
Yeah.
And then basically the only downside of being 5'6" to 5'9" in that range in the NBA is it's almost impossible to guard
It's a huge disadvantage.
another guy that's just as good.
Your defensive liability.
Yeah, so that's kind of like the biggest stain. Well, not stain, but like disadvantage that he had to deal with. But like I'm so proud of him. He's still playing. He's older than me. He's killing it. EuroLeague champ. He won the French league just now. Congrats, Dave.
Oh, wow, that's pretty
Lil
cool.
Dave.
Champion.
That's what we call him, Lil Dave.
How was it being white dude standing up because you're super tall in HBCU?
Dude, I'm actually working on a show called Hooper about my experience.
Okay.
So I was a token white dude here in Toronto, and you know I grew up with Jamaicans. And when we came to Canada during the war, I went to an all-white area, and I experienced a lot of prejudice for being Serbian, and that kids didn't know because you'd see it on the news, and like there's always some demonized group on the news. At the time, it was the Serbs, because the Serbian leader did this and that, and you know now we see it with other groups.
Yeah.
But like at the time, they're like, go back to your shitty genocidal country. Like white kids were like that. And then I was just like crying every day, coming home, getting bullied. And then I went to the hood. I don't know if we have real hoods in Canada. We have certain, lower class neighborhoods, but I was the token white kid, and Jamaican kids were like, fucking white boy. So I always had 1 foot in, 1 foot out with different groups, but I also had friends in every group. So I was like navigating being kind of like a little bit of a pariah, like an outcast. And then I get a full Division I scholarship to an HBCU, and I played AU, so I'd go all over the States, but I'd never like lived. And Southside Chicago, Chirac, murder capital of the U.S. at that time. And basically on my official visit, somebody got shot in the parking lot of the motel. Oh, wow. And I made my parents get on the ground. They're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, someone got shot in the parking lot. Get down. It's just like, that's how it started.
Yeah.
And then I ended up going there. And honestly, it was one of the best experiences of my life. So Southside Chicago is so segregated that, you have 60 square miles where you pretty much don't see a white person.
Wow.
And if you do, it's like, what are you doing here?
They're the odd one out. That's very interesting, right?
So I'm like 6'9", and I came there, and, I was just like, everybody was so friendly because everyone was so grateful to go to college because they're like the only ones in their family. We talk about redlining, African-American communities and racism within America. It's like compartmentalized, and people, it's really hard to get out of the hood because it's like 3 of your brothers are gang members. That's the only way you can kind of really survive, unless you want to work 12 hours a day at a McDonald's or a Popeyes. And your mom's probably working 3 jobs, and she can't take care of, multiple kids. And, the school system's lacking. Everybody's just like, you're dropping out. And then when somebody comes along like, yo, kid, you want to make a stack in like a day? Go deliver this for me. And then you become inaugurated into a gang. So it's like, that's an easier way out than like trying to navigate like a shitty school system where, I'm sure this teachers in those high schools are trying to help kids, but it's
they don't have the resources.
They don't have the resources. So they're like navigating. And I was like, I assessed all this because I studied also politics and history and all that as minors. But I was just like, damn. And then I'd walk down the street and people be like, look, Mom, like a white person. Yeah. So I was like walking down the street. And then one time I was talking to this girl my first 2 weeks at school.
Right.
And she's like, you're the first white person I ever had a conversation with in my life. I'm like, how is that possible? Like, you live in the
That's
United
wild.
States of America, Chicago of all places. She's like, I go shopping, I go downtown, and like sometimes white people sell me stuff, and I say thank you, but it's never been more than a 5-second conversation.
That's crazy.
For me, growing up in Toronto, it's like it's inconceivable because we're just
multicultural.
We're like
melting pot,
a melting pot, and then like there'd be different cliques, just like any university. So in our cafeteria, we had the Black nationalists. And like the Black Israelites, and they were just there with a megaphone in the cafeteria. They're like, burn the white man, round them all up, put them on an island, and drop a nuclear bomb on them.
Oh my God.
And Humpty walked. I was like roided up, shaved head. I looked like John Cena, and I'd be like, preach. And they'd be
the most
like,
stereotypical, like,
and they're like, what? And then I'd be sitting with one of them. And I sat with it, and he's sitting alone, right? And I'm like eating a salad. I'm like consuming mad food because it's twice this size.
Right.
And I'm just like, what's good, bro? And he's like, oh, nothing, just like preaching the word. I'm like, oh, what's the word? He's like, like what, the white man? I'm like, I get it. White people have enslaved half the world, colonialism, the UK, Anglo-Saxon involvement, all that stuff, really bad slavery. You've lost your identity. I 100% get it.
Yeah.
And he's like, what's your name? I'm like, Nem. He's like, what? I'm like, Nem. He's like, what? I'm like, Nem. He's like, what's that? I'm like, it's short for Nemanja. And he's like, what? I'm like, that's my name. He's like, I ain't never heard that. I'm like, it's because I'm Serbian. He's like, what's that? I'm like, it's like a group, it's like a race of people in Southeast Europe. It's like, and we were also enslaved in our own country for 400 years under the Ottoman Empire. And he's like, what? And I'm like, my skin is white, but I'm not white. And he's like,
what? Yeah, there's a lot of research to do.
Your name's not Bob?
And then I started chilling with this dude randomly with a line. Like lunchtime was the same.
Yeah.
And he left the group within like a month of like just having lunch with me. And we just talk. I'm like, race isn't identified just by skin. You have bone density of different genetics. And like, people, like a Ethiopian person is not the same as a Ghanaian person. Like completely different races.
Yeah.
And like Somalian people, like different builds, bodies. We have multiple things going on aside from our skin color. But the most important thing is just, be a good person and love each other. Anyways, so I'm doing a show. I'm writing a pilot about my experience. And I had a really rough road with the coach there because it's a long story. I don't have to get into it, but I suffered a lot. And I saw the whole microcosm of the U.S. racial and socioeconomic dynamics, which is it sucks because people are asleep and they're suffering.
Let me interject a little bit.
Yeah.
You say racial and
Socioeconomic.
Yeah, socioeconomic. So I think that's the biggest thing is socioeconomics, not race. You
100%.
just said it yourself. You can walk 60 blocks and you not see a white person.
Yeah.
And it's because they're in a very poor area. And
100%.
when you just talked to a guy going to college that didn't know about your country.
Yeah.
I knew that stuff because I researched that stuff.
Yeah.
And it's just that's to me what racism is cultural differences.
Yeah.
It's I do not
ignorance.
understand why you guys eat goats. You know what I mean? It's super simple in a way. It's
Don't
just
tell that to a Jamaican person.
No, but I love goat. I'm just
Oxtail.
it's just that people don't understand people.
Yeah.
And it's super simple. And you said a couple of weeks of talking to him, the truth.
Yeah. Well, I was just speaking my experience in history, and I think that's the most important. I think right now we're entering this new age of tribalism, which could be good in the long run, but right now it's not so great because we have these echo chambers, these bubbles.
Yeah.
Even our algorithms. You watch 3 videos. I watched I'm not Christian, but I watched 3 videos on Christian intellectuals, which I respect. Mm-hmm. And then my whole YouTube shifted to Christian shit. I'm just okay, cool.
That happens. Yeah.
3 months ago is Muslim stuff.
Yeah.
Or it's Israel, Palestine or something. I'm just or motivational things. It's just always shifting. If you get sucked into one little bubble, you forget that there's the universe is full of wisdom, and it really depends on if you're willing to listen and learn. But I think the biggest thing is people are segregated, and in segregation, it can go one of two ways. People can be really like open and amazed to meet people from different groups.
Yeah.
Or they could be like, I heard they're this, I heard they're that, because you have no contact. So like, it's I've seen racism from every group, and it's just like I'm like, how many friends do you have of that group? And they're like,
yo, we should go to Mississippi and just like ask people in the street, like, have you ever met a white person? Because I know a lot of people in Mississippi that never met a white person.
Yeah. I'm sure it'd be fun. I'm sure like people, when they realize you're human and you have you're the same as we're a lot more similar than people think.
100%.
As funny as it sounds, like I can relate to your story. I grew up in Vaughan, years back, and predominantly Italian, white community. And now it's more diverse, you'll got every walk of life. But looking back at my elementary school experience, not so much high school, that's when I started being introduced to different races. It was all white people. I had like one black kid in my class, and then now looking back, it's like I have so many friends that are black, contacts, professionals and things like that. So it's just interesting that you said that, because you're telling your story and I'm like, I never had that experience. I'm like, oh no, I can relate to that. When I was a kid, I never had those experience. I never, had those interactions, right? Because of the location, the environment you're in. But
it's also like who you are deep down, and your family trauma that you download from your ancestors and your parents. If they suffered some sort of thing at the hands of others, they have the choice. At somewhere along the line, you have a choice how to react.
Right.
If you were enslaved, if you suffered, if you choose the path of love, which is way harder. Good things happen, and you accept other people, and like everything ends up being a happy ending for the most part, if that's the way. But if you choose to hold a grudge or hatred, it's easier first and foremost, but it closes a door to like wisdom and like love and just like getting along with other people, because you don't want to hear it. You see that like you see it happening right now with so many groups. It's like it's black or white. I'm like, no, it's never black and white. It's something in between. It's gray.
Never black and white.
But there's also like people demean like good people. Like I feel like they're being shunned, especially in social media. And a lot of the times it's not like considered cool, to be a good person. Like we were having that conversation, Joe and I, on North Carolina, like masculinity. A lot of people like to associate it with being like the most aggressive, the loudest one in the room.
That's toxic masculinity.
Right, toxic masculinity. But my grandfather that passed away a few months back, lived to 96, helped, the Americans liberate his town from the Nazis. But this is the kind of guy that would walk into a room, and
I have a similar grandpa.
Right, but he wouldn't say a word. But you knew not to fuck with him. But what I'm saying is like that to me, because I grew up with that, was true masculinity. It's like, I don't want to take your life, but I have the ability to spare it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Jordan Peterson says that. It's like, being able to do something isn't the same as doing it. Like, it's just like you sit in a room. Like he said, I think he was talking about Joe Rogan. It's like Joe Rogan can literally take out anybody. But you don't think that about him. He's a very kind guy. When you meet him, but he has that ability, and I think to me that's masculinity. That's what we're missing a lot of in society. We have a lot of anger and rage, right?
And Joe Rogan's like, people talk shit about Joe Rogan. I'm like, bro, the guy is so open. He has every walk of life come on his show. He doesn't judge anybody. He just lets them speak their mind, and if he doesn't agree, he challenges them. Not in a negative way. He's just like, but isn't this, and this? And he's open to be proven wrong. And I think that's a healthy embodiment, because he's comfortable in his own shoes. And I think he's a good embodiment of a strong man. I don't know him personally, but I hear he has a family and, has like a little farm going there in Austin.
There's a lot of misperceptions of who he is too. Like I talked, like especially with women, like the media likes to play him up to be like red pill and toxic and all that. But any man that, has been around, influential or inspiring men in their life can listen to it and say, no, this is how men talk. And I feel like there's that disparity. You know what I mean? Like what you see, like you were saying, right? It's like what you see how black people talk when you actually interact with them. You realize, no, they're just as human as you. And the media, propels them to be a certain way. North Carolina, me and Joe were having this conversation, having a laugh.
So funny.
I never judge, but I'm not gonna lie. People have told me certain things. Watch out, careful. It's the South. It's this. It's that. Not one person ever made me feel uncomfortable. In fact, I might have made them feel uncomfortable at one point.
So we were basically hanging out, like, other than like my family, my group, our church is majority black. There's a couple white people that go there, which whatever. I never see color. So, but with for this story, we were in Swansboro, we were in Morale, we were in Winterville, we were in Greenville, all these really cool small towns with majority white.
I lived in Winterville.
Yeah. So we talked. We'll get into that, but all these really cool towns, but we were majority white all around us.
Yeah.
And then he was just like heard stories about like how racist is down there, and he's with a black dude, and like not one person showed me racism.
Southern hospitality.
The only person that scared us was the dude with the gun that was Spanish. You know what I mean? Like
those Dominicans.
Yeah. So I mean, like,
joking.
yeah, it's just like
So
a lot of misperception.
Yeah. So let's take it back to your basketball career. So you got the scholarship, you enrolled in the school.
Yeah.
Was the dream to be a professional NBA player?
Yeah.
So,
I was at my highest, finishing high school. I was ranked first in Canada as a power forward in my position. It ranged from first to 10th or whatever, but
still,
I at that time Canadians didn't get respect and love from the States.
Right.
So I didn't have many options.
Wow.
So it was either like a private bougie white boy college in Connecticut, Quinnipiac, or a school, HBCU in the hood. But the HBCU was like, everything's here, sign the dotted line. The other school was like, come try out, we like you and two other guys. And my coach and my mentor here was like, sign what's on the table right now. It's all the season's school year is about to start in 2 weeks.
Exactly.
It's like last minute.
Yeah.
And I didn't have any options. Today, I'll get into it because I'm doing a movie about my coach,
Right.
Coach Roe Russell, and he is the godfather of Canadian basketball. People don't know. He's a Jamaican Canadian guy. Grew up in Toronto. His parents were the first black store owners in Toronto.
Oh, wow.
Cool. Very cool.
And basically grew up playing hockey, experienced some racism, and like saw people playing ball, and then ended up being a basketball player and ended up being a coach. So he would have these runs, and like people would show up from all over Toronto, and like in the early 90s. And basically he built this kind of mecca of basketball, but he was even bringing guys to the States and getting them exposure in the early 90s.
Yep.
So this guy, he's a very Christian guy. He's from Jane and Finch, from a small Jane and Finch apartment, has sent over 510 players on Division I scholarships since the early 90s.
Wow.
And all of our NBA stars, not all of them, but about 85% of our NBA players in the NBA are his alumni. And all the ones that aren't are offshoots of the system that he built for AAU and club teams. So my next documentary is going to be about him and his journey. A very humble guy, and certain kids he saved from the streets, saved their lives, and a lot out of those 500. Obviously, not everyone played pro, but everyone ended up getting a scholarship. Some kids were like problem children. He was sabotaged in the news on CBC, and like tried a smear campaign on him. And like the kid that they like interrogated and made him go against went back years later and said, "No, I'm a lawyer because of Coach Roe." And basically, he changed my life, and he acknowledged that like it's pretty it's interesting because if you're looking at catalysts, how we became a top 3 to 5 country in basketball,
right?
He's one of the biggest, and nobody knows about it. People know who he is, like LeBron knows who he is, Coach Calipari knows who he is, but not the average
mainstream.
The average person. So my next project's about him, and I'm one of his alumni, and he sent me to this college. But like before 2011, Canadians, there'd be like one every 7 years drafted.
Now you guys are like got gold, the bronze, the silver.
Now there's
aspirations.
7. Yeah, now there's 7 guys every year getting drafted on average. So it's like
dope
he flipped
team
the script.
Year. Dope team.
Yeah, and basically 2011 was the floodgates were opened by Corey Joseph and Tristan Thompson, and those are both his guys.
Nice.
And since then, it's been like, especially with the rise of social media, Canadians are respected now. Like we're arguably we won bronze at the World Cup of basketball this past September. I don't know if we're on paper top 3 if everybody brings their teams, but we're definitely a top 5 country in basketball.
Yeah.
Which 20, 30 years ago, no one could ever conceive of Canada as a basketball country.
Well,
We were
I was just gonna say the Toronto
hockey.
Raptors winning in 2019. That was a huge for me because I remember the Raptors, right? Yeah, I remember the Raptors when I was a kid, and I'm like, they were nowhere to the degree of coming close to a championship. And when they did, it's like even people that didn't like basketball were showing up because it was just like remarkable. Like you said, the Americans didn't really think much of the Canadians being involved. I was even surprised we had a basketball team because we're the only Canadians that have one in the NBA. But
the squad's dope this year, man.
Yeah.
You got Shea Gildress, you got Wiggins. I mean, they got a solid squad, man.
Shea, top 3 player in the world on paper. Like
That's
he
awesome.
was, it was him, Luka, and Jokic top 3 in voting.
Luka, Jokic. Let's talk about that. Like,
Those are my people.
That's from like your people, man.
Yeah.
My bad.
no, just bring it back.
I get stretchy. Yeah, those are your people, man.
Yeah.
So like, man, I love Luka.
Yeah.
I love his game.
Yeah.
I love like the way he plays. I love how he takes basketball serious, but not too serious.
Yeah.
And he's been playing since 14 professional, right?
Yeah.
So he's from your hood.
Yeah,
Like your
he's-
area. Like let's talk about that. Like you before you got here, you were living there? Or
We escaped because of the war. I mean, luckily we're from the capital, so at the time there was no warfare, but the economy crashed.
Yeah.
So we were lucky that there was no killing around us. However, after we left in '99, NATO bombed Belgrade and Serbia, and similar casualties as 9/11, which most people don't know. But at that time, like my mom was a doctor, and we couldn't get a loaf of bread. So you can imagine being like upper middle class and being like, "Yo, what are we doing?
That's a problem,
We got to get out of here."
Yeah.
We almost went to Zimbabwe. And
wow.
because she got offered a really good job,
Okay.
and I would have probably ended up in some bougie white boy boarding school or something. But I'm glad we came here. My dad, who's the hippie, he was like, "No, we're going to Canada," with his long hair. And everything.
Yeah.
We're going to Canada, and he's like, "It's sick there," and like we went. But the problem is when we came, my mom's med school wasn't recognized.
I was just gonna say.
Yeah,
So
that's good. Yeah.
the system doesn't recognize, and like the Yugoslavian healthcare system and education system is like eons ahead of North American. No offense, but it like
Right.
a lot of European
European-
systems.
way beyond. Yeah.
And then she had to like work her way from scratch and support our family and raise us, and like she all hats off to my mom. Like my mom worked her way as the assistant of the assistant to the physio. She was more qualified than the owners of the private clinics, and then she worked her way up. But she never had time to redo her exams because she was raising us. And like my dad was just. He never really learned English that well, so it's hard to be a journalist if you don't speak the language. So he focused on the community. But my mom's brother was a professional basketball player, 6'6", guard. He played for the cadet Yugoslavian team with all those guys like Dražen Petrovic and all that whole.
I told you that dude's
Yeah.
the best, bro.
Yeah.
He's like the great.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Just bring it with you, bro.
I love Petrovic is like Kobe Bryant's like says like that's the sickest dude I've ever played against from Europe.
Petrovic was like
That's awesome.
the Croatian Jordan. Yeah, him and Kukoc was insane. Kukoc was my favorite player growing up as a kid. And basically, I grew up with basketball. Like when I was born on my little fetus, they put a basketball the day I was born and took photos of me. And I don't
Like they groomed you. For
they groomed. I don't know if that might be abuse, but whatever. It was. They set the tone.
Hey, they almost got you into the NBA. Right?
Yeah. And then I had to leave. So I never got schooled I did kind of. So what happened was we moved here and it just was in me. Like no one around me played basketball. It was just hockey.
Right.
And I just, every day I'd be working on my game. When the internet came along, I'd like scour the internet. It was so hard to find like drills and shit. And like me and my boy would just train every day at recess. And like we'd grind and like I'd go back to Serbia and like my uncle would like train me.
Yeah.
And then when I got to like 17 or 18, I got an offer to play in Greece. But Greece is really sketchy about like paying you. And my mom's like, you need to get a degree.
Yeah.
And so I turned it down, but I would go every summer and work out with pro teams in Serbia, some of the best young pro teams. And I worked out with a team called Mega, which is Jokic's alma mater.
Yeah.
And they were like a walk away from my grandma's building. And I would just do 2-a-days with them all summer. And every end of the summer, they'd offer me a contract. And I'd be like, I gotta go back to D1. I gotta play. They're like, fuck your America. You need this. And they were kind of right, to be honest. But everything happens for a reason. And, it was, I worked my way up playing ball. And unfortunately, it was like taken away from me. I had some shitty situations. I got injured. And then crazy thing happened. I had 3 agents, God bless them. They all passed away in the middle of a big contract. So after
my God, at the same time?
No, it was over like 4 years.
Oh, wow.
But like, not 4 years, over 3 years.
But
so
still, yeah.
Every time it happened, the second time it happened, I was like, what are the chances? The third time it happened, I was like,
that's so scary. Yeah.
Dude, I've been grinding so hard and like something's just telling me like, so I took it as a sign and like, I was so exhausted because of grind. Like I signed a contract in Europe and they're like, we're sorry, we can't take you. We're going to take a local guy for less money. I'm like, I'll take less money. And they're like, your agent didn't sign the agreement. And then they're like, we don't know where he is. And then his partner emailed me like a week or 2 later. And he was like, he passed away in the hospital. Wow. He didn't know he had cancer. They told him he had 7 days to live. I'm like, God bless him. Like, he never went to the doctor. And after that, I was just like, man, let me take a year off. But if you're in your prime, like you're 24, and you say, let me take a year off, your career's over.
Done, yeah. And
I was already injured, so I was coming back from an injury, like pretty much for some people, career ending. I had a herniated disc. Oh. And then I just, right before that happened, 2 weeks before that happened, I took a job working as a bouncer. And I was just like, I'll just make a little 100%. Bit of cash 2 weeks before I go to Europe. Yeah. And then they threw me a going away party because they really liked me. And then I'm like, when that happened, I was just like, hey guys, by the way, I'm probably gonna have to come in next week if that's cool, because I'm not leaving. They're like, fuck you, we're not throwing you another going away party. Wow. And then I ended up working as a bouncer for 4.5 years as I was building a production company. So that's how the next stage.
That's how you got connected with the city, right?
Yeah.
You got to learn more about every walk of life. Really.
100%. It was like a sociology, psychology 100%, course. Yeah.
That's awesome. So you kind of answered my question. I was curious, like what happened with your basketball career going into that, and then you started your production company. Yeah. And then you said comedian / filmmaker was simultaneous, right? Yeah. You kind of pursued both.
Seth Rogen was my idol. I even have a movie
100%
I'm working on called I Love Seth Rogen.
Yeah, remember you telling me about that?
Me and Nima are supposed to act in it. Yeah.
No, that's awesome, man. And so speaking of films, you made quite an exceptional one that I have the privilege of watching. Yes, because I'm a filmmaker myself. Shout out.
Let's go.
But you
shout out to filmmakers.
Shout out to filmmakers. But what I admire about you, I was telling Joe, is you're a comedy filmmaker. Yeah. Through and through. You're not trying to be anything, right? Yeah. And I watched My Friend Tommy.
Yeah.
That's so good.
Great film. I love a good documentary. I love The 40-Year-Old Virgin. I should mention, it's about a man trying to enter into adulthood by doing the deed. First, tell us about why you wanted to make this project.
So after my career ended, I came back to Toronto. I dropped out, worked out with the Bulls. One of my agents passed after that. I was supposed to go to Europe, then I didn't, and then I ended up coming back to Toronto without a finished degree, and then I transferred to Ryerson. It was called at the time TMU.
Shout out. No, it's called now TMU.
Shout out Ryerson, though. And they, quote unquote, had the best program for TV and film in Canada on paper. I don't know what that really means, because a TV and film degree doesn't mean much. But
I applied to that same degree, but I didn't get it.
Yeah. I had to
but they told me the same thing.
Go through some stuff to get in.
I believe it. It was a rigorous application.
Yeah.
Really.
And it's a lot of like kids from like executives at Bell and like stuff like that. And I was just like, I'm just here to play ball and like, be a filmmaker and offer value through storytelling. And then my first day in this really big class, I see this chubby Korean dude, and he's like, "Oh, hey guys, so we're gonna be going to the bar, the Ram. We're doing karaoke night. My name's Tom, by the way. Oh yeah, so come on now." And I'm just like,
That's how he talks.
That's how he talks.
Yeah.
Oh, crazy. I never.
And
met
I'm
him.
just like, "Oh, cool." He's like a young professor or like a TA or something. And I'm like going for it was like a scene in a water in a movie, and at the water fountain, and I'm like sipping, and I'm like bent over. He's like, "Hey y'all, bro, do you play for the Rams?" I'm like, "Yeah, nice to meet you. What's your name?" He's like, Tommy. I'm like, "Oh, I'm Nem." He's like, "Oh, I love basketball. I'm here to be a sports journalist. I really love basketball. It's my favorite sport, but I'm a short Asian guy, 5'10". I'm like, "You're pretty tall, like you're not that short." And he's like, "Yeah, basketball, like favorite sport." I'm like, "Are you a professor here or like a TA?" He's like, "Oh no, first year student." I'm like, "Oh, cool." I'm like, "Cool." And then we end up hanging out all the time because he's like pure positive energy.
100%. Yeah.
And I'm just like,
He's a vibe.
he's a vibe,
Yeah,
man.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
I like surrounding myself with positive people, and he's just always selfless, helping everybody. He'd cross the street to shake strangers' hands.
Oh my God.
At the beginning, I was like, "What's going on here?"
Yeah.
Like, why is this guy so nice?
Yeah.
I'm like, is he like a pedophile or like what's he doing?
It's
like
true. Yeah. When you're
sacrificing-
too nice, it's
Yeah.
like, okay,
You think
calm down.
something's wrong?
Yeah.
Yeah, is he sacrificing goats on Wednesdays? What's going on? But we'd hang out in these computer labs, like every school's got them, and we'd have 24-hour access.
100%.
So we'd be like drinking beers. Some people would be smoking weed, doing
Nice.
assignments.
In the computer lab?
Yeah,
That's
not
sick.
in.
Oh, okay.
They'd maybe be drinking, but not
Right.
smoking.
Right,
But
right.
they'd step outside and come back in, and like we'd spend nights there, and like he'd always hang.
Yep.
And we all usually collaborated on assignments. And then like at 11 sharp, he'd be like packed, ready to go. And every night I'm like, "Bro, why are you always leaving at 11 sharp?" He's like, Asian moms. I'm like, "No."
Yeah. You couldn't relate. Yeah.
And I'm like, "Oh, like, how old are you, bro?" He's like, 27, 26. I'm like, "Okay."
But you knew from the get go this guy was not.
Well,
like,
yeah,
young,
he looked like he was in his like late 20s, early 30s.
Oh, okay.
I'm just like, okay, cool, man. And then like I realized, like we saw on Facebook, he had like a photo from grade 5 in the 80s, and I'm just like, dude, we know at the time, it was like, we know you're 35.
You did the math, yeah.
You're 35, so don't tell anyone. I'm like, everybody knows, bro. It's your Facebook display picture.
Wow. Okay.
He's like, "Oh, I gotta change that." And then we we connected over basketball. So I showed him all the crazy teams in Serbia, like Red Star and Partizan. Like those when those teams play, it's like
Crazy.
soccer matches in Italy.
Fireworks,
people are dying.
yeah.
People would
Yeah.
die. It's like hooligans
wow.
for basketball.
Oh wow.
And he was like blown away, and then he became obsessed with like culture in Serbia, and then like I guess I put him on to Balkan culture, and we became friends. And then I'm like, and he's always like, "Help me with the ladies, bro. So help me with the ladies. My mom says I'm overweight." I'm like, "Dude, what's going on?"
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh, you just need some help with the ladies." I'm like, "I'll help you, but like, are you a virgin?" And he's like, "Oh no." I'm like,
So what made you? Let me interject. What made you go straight to that? Because I always had this theory, like you can pick it up, but some people say you can't. Like, did you?
my Virgdar is strong.
Yeah, your first time, eh? Like you just because you hung out with him for so long. That you
Yeah, I was
picked
just
it
seeing
up,
him
eh?
every day. It's
Yeah.
like you can tell. Like,
Yeah.
you can tell with
something's
certain
different.
certain people. A lot of people you can't. Majority you can't. But like someone like Tommy, he was just so nice, but so extroverted at the same time, which is a rare socially awkward but extroverted.
Right.
And I'm like, that's a rare combination. Everything he says naturally is a punchline.
Right.
It's like hilarious.
Right.
And I'm like, he's like, "Okay, we know you're a virgin now." He's like, "Okay, don't tell anyone." I'm like, "It doesn't really matter. People assume, but like whatever." And I'm like, "Why don't we take you to spring break and help you get laid?" And that was the first like bro idea.
Right.
And then when I found out that he had a curfew at the age of 35 with his born again Christian Korean parents, never kissed a girl, never even cooked an omelet. His mom did everything. He
That was in the
never,
movie.
Yeah.
never
No, it
cleaned
was
his
wild. Yeah.
laundry,
Yeah.
never done anything. He was inept of any adult skills.
Right.
And he was left at the age of 13. And I'm just like, it's not this isn't just about sex anymore. This is like, what does it mean to be an adult? And you have been left, what's the word, bereft? I don't know. Well, you've been left without an adulthood, and you need help more than just the
coddling,
ladies.
a bit more coddling. You know?
Coddled and also suppressed, both. And it's just like, it's not a great combination to grow. But he was just so positive and adamant, and he's like, I want to do this. And then I'm like, instead of going to spring break, let me take my time on this and let me turn this into a cross-continental quest of self-discovery. And then the film basically is us going on a cross-continental quest for self-discovery for Tommy, the 40-year-old virgin, to rediscover the adulthood he never had. And in every city, he's challenged to like new adult skills, from like, you guys saw him like do laundry for the first time or ask a girl out for the first time, leading up to sexuality. And then it's like, what does it mean to be a man in today's society? What are like the societal pressures? What do we think we need to do to become men, and different things like that? So
it's interesting.
Go ahead.
It's interesting because, like, you know, you're a comedian, and that was funny. I mean, it was funny. I watched it twice.
Thanks.
I'm gonna watch it again with my wife. It's interesting because I try to go back, because I love movies. I love comedy movies. I try to go back to comedy movies in the past that were funny but had a break in the humor and with real topics. And like I go back to Richard Pryor and some of his movies and how they were written, and it was just like very, very funny. But then there's a serious moment of like, and then look, I know this is a name that you really don't want to mention, but Bill Cosby had that too in some of his films. Like, you did it, the way, I mean, yours is more like a documentary. It's so natural. Yeah. And that moment between you and Tommy, basically in the middle of the film or towards the end of the film, where Tommy's just like questioning your relationship. Yeah. That right there, like, I had friends like that. And that just brought me to a situation like, geez, like, what is going on here? You know, like, and how was that interaction for you? Because you came off, you were very genuine, and like you're trying to show him the world. Yeah. How did it come off to you? So, you can see it in the film, but how did it really come off?
I mean, you see it in the film. Me and Tommy have this like little brother, big brother dynamic where even though he's 10 years older, he's the little brother, and I'm like physically the big brother and he's just like the one who didn't experience things. And I'm just like, here, do this. But I'm like very blunt. I don't know if it's because I'm Serbian. We're very like blunt, open people. And we're just like, do this. It's good for you. Drink this. It's good for you. Oh, you don't have girlfriend? I help you. Let's go. So it's like, I don't know. I have that. I think it's genetic or something. But like, it's funny because I looked at an index of self-confidence by country. This was like randomly years ago while I was trying to make the film. It took me a long time to make it, but like I saw a self-confidence by country, and the lowest on the list, the last country on the list was South Korea. And number one on the list was Serbia.
So you were literally polar opposite.
Wow. America was yin and the yang, eh?
America was top 10. But Serbia was number one, and I was just like, I laughed because it's like, oh, it's a Serbian guy making a movie.
Where's Canada?
I don't think it's up there. Yeah, I don't think
towards South Korea.
We're docile in Canada. Jesus. But I don't know. Like it's always been a butting head. Not always, but we have so much love for each other. Yeah, that's what we're like brothers. Yeah. And like I'm sure, I don't know, I believe in past lives. I'm sure we were connected in some spiritual way. But like he a lot of things that he didn't see in the immediate future, he would be like, question and be like, just trust me, bro, just trust me. Yeah. And then we had lots of battles, and it's like, but everything I ever did was out of love. It's kind of like a parent kind of dynamic in some regards, because you know sometimes your parents know what's good for you, right? In the time that you don't. Yeah. And you just want to fight them, and you're like, and then years later, you're like, I'm glad my mom did that. We're like, even though, you know, that's just how the dynamic was. It's not still like that now. We're just like chill, but
what he was lacking in the film, that's what I kind of that transcended the subject matter. Because at first, it's like he's a virgin. It's like we all heard of that before, especially society. We put a lot of like prevalence on sex, right? And but it was more to that. You kind of wanted to show that this had this had to do more about building character, right? Like for me, I told you when I watched it, I said, because 40-Year-Old Virgin, the famous comedy of Judd Apatow, like the guy was like self-reliant, self-independent, even though he had like a mundane job.
Yeah.
He was, a man and an individual, right?
Yeah.
The only issue is that he didn't do the deed, and that was the joke. But this one, it was like, oh wow, he has a curfew. He doesn't know how to make a scrambled egg.
Yeah.
And that puts it on another level.
Yeah.
To the people, like, what do you think? What's your take on society interpreting like sex, and why is there's so much value on it?
Dude,
good question.
Yeah, I became an expert on adult virginity against my will.
Yeah,
And,
like you were forced to research.
I think I'm one of the more, like, I've scoured the internet. I think I'm up there.
So tell us about it. Yeah.
I didn't want this, guys. I didn't ask for this.
I didn't choose the adult virgin.
Like it's just a comedian.
But okay, before you answer this question, like, what is it, James Cameron? He's a professional in so many avenues because of filmmaking.
Yeah.
It's like he has to study deep sea.
He's an
He has to
oceanographer
study
now.
space.
Yeah.
It's just like, so like,
And I
sex.
studied people who haven't had sex.
Yeah. So tell us about that.
But why? Yeah, like,
Well,
tell us why.
it started with him because I was just like, I wanted to help my friend. And then I'm like, oh, what's the deal with adult virginity? I feel like I met a few virgins in my life that are over 20. And let me do some research. So like over the years, I would research and I'd accumulated like documents and like had like files and Google Sheets and like all this stuff. And then I realized that this is like the largest minority group in the world, and it's in the hundreds of millions, and it transcends race, gender, nationality, all those aspects, and it's everywhere in varying degrees. And it's a growing epidemic in some regards. And like it's about 1 in 20 people in the West, and in Pacific Asia it's like 1 in 10, and it's getting
1 in 20 in the West.
Yeah.
Wow.
And keep in mind that's like 18, 19 plus. So it's like you have a lot of people in their early 20s that are virgin.
Yeah.
But like it's still a huge number. And at the same time, it's growing because we're all being sucked into our devices and our online lives, and we're not really interacting, human to human.
But you say, I just want to interject. You say it's a growing epidemic, and it's interesting that you use that word because I think every, especially a man, should have the right to interact with a woman and know what it's like to have that intimate experience. But at the same time, a lot of men kind of voice, you just said it, like with the social media age and how they kind of navigate relationships. Yeah. The game has changed completely, in a generation. 100%. Do you feel a lot of them are maybe opting out or choosing not to even partake in it?
100%, yeah. So under that group of hundreds of millions, there's thousands of subgroups. And I learned that, there's so many millions of virgins, adult virgins, who choose to be virgins. Yeah. And a lot of them aren't even religious. They're just like, I'm waiting for the right time. Other ones are religious and they want to wait till marriage. And other people want to have sex and they just never developed social skills or other types of social aspects of understanding. Some people have disabilities, mental, physical.
Body dysmorphia, lack of confidence.
Yes, anxiety, depression. And like after a certain time, like the saddest thing for the majority, but there is a huge percentage that chooses happily to be a virgin. They're a big chunk. But for the majority, they're a subgroup that's associated to a lot of shame because after a certain time, if you want to lose your virginity and you don't develop the skill sets, you kind of wither away and forget about it. And you don't really go to a bar and say, hey, by the way, I'm a 32, 47, 58-year-old virgin. If you even go to bars, you kind of just keep that to yourself.
Show me the ways.
Yeah, or you just sit and play video games or do whatever you do, like kind of like the 40-year-old virgin, and you don't interact with the world.
You become desensitized to it.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of shame associated to it, to a lot of the subgroups within it. I think one thing that's skewed that people should know is that the incel movement is like 0.1% of all adult virgins, and they get most of the negative media attention. People think that everybody
is an incel.
Is an incel who is, for the most part, they're just entitled.
But Jordan Peterson talks about that, like that labeling, because there are men that go through celibate. Like the celibacy is a huge word now being thrown around. Like, I experienced that too, where it's like, no, because what happens is in our society, it becomes disposable, where it's just about quantity over quality. Yeah. And sometimes you have to take a moment and say, well, like, hang on, like, what am I really like? Let me just be more selective. Yeah. But you're saying with the incel movement, that's a completely different story. That's like red pill rage to like the max, right?
Well, I think with the newer generations, no offense, we have had such a good time as a society that now people want to bear a different cross for whatever, even if they don't have that many problems in their lives. So people want to suffer if they haven't suffered and have some sort of group identity. So we see little bubbles growing and different echo chambers of whatever your cross is to bear. You want to suffer more and join a group. But like one of those movements is the incel movement, but they all are stem from privilege, because you have the privilege to want to suffer. You don't have to suffer. Like, you don't have to join a group that's like angry. You can just love everybody, in my opinion. I don't know.
No, for
as
sure.
a self-proclaimed sex pro here, virgin pro.
Virgin. I don't know about the sex yet. I just
we'll let you know after this podcast.
Virgin pro is self-proclaimed virgin pro. What do you think a father should tell his daughter who is in school and all her friends are saying you need to go ahead and have sex with Billy? The pressure. Yeah. So what do you tell a 16-year-old daughter about sex pressure?
Oh, dude, I would say don't give in. Do it when you're ready, and make sure you do it safe. I don't know, like
that's good.
I would raise my kids. Good. Yeah, I would raise my kid. Earlier in my life, I don't know. I was in relationships, and I was also like going wild in between. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a fine line. The older I get, the more conservative I get in this regard, but I still am liberal enough to say you need to know and you need to experience different things. But at a certain level, every time you have sex with somebody, you're exchanging energy. I don't know. I'm a spiritual guy, so like we have like fields, electromagnetic fields around our bodies now. They can measure it, emitting from your chest, your chakras, and like every time, this closest intimacy that you can have with a human being is through sex. And let's talk about spiritually transmitted diseases. I think there's some merit to that, and like you can carry something that somebody was carrying for weeks.
I agree with
longer.
that.
What about parabonding? You believe in that?
What's parabonding?
I heard about that term where basically, like the more you have sex with like your body count, like it's higher and higher, it's harder for you to like be committed to one person.
Dude, I can see the merit to that, because it's like, yeah, you experience different things, but then you start wanting more. It's like, if I can get a girl with like a fatter ass, or if I could get a girl with like bigger tits, or like if I could
try something different,
or if I could find a guy with a bigger dick for people who like dicks, and like it's just like, there's a certain point. It's like that's not what life's just about. Yeah, you want good sex, but it's like, what are we losing in the process? Like, where's our human connection? What's love? Like, Yeah. So I do believe that we should make love over just like smash. But I think it's okay if you're a young person to experiment and do different things while you're young. But there's like a tipping point where it's like, if you kind of go back to the religious text, it's like lust, and like there's a fine line. I don't think it should be black and white like the ancient religious texts, but I think there's energy, and I think energy is like a spectrum. So if you're just constantly like obsessing over lust, you're not living in your truest form. You're just like being distracted. Yeah. And after a while, you're just either gonna catch an STD or get somebody pregnant, or you're just going to get so desensitized to sex that you're going to look for the next weird shit.
Well, it becomes your personality, right? Yeah. And a lot of people kind of, especially in a society that's hypersexual, I'm only speaking from experience. You have to take a step back and say like, well, what are we doing here, right? Yeah. And the reason why I bring it up, because I come from a conservative background.
Oh, yeah.
Like my parents, very serious. Obviously wasn't discussed, we didn't openly discuss sex and things like that. But I often look back to generations and try to figure out like, why, like you said, in this generation, we have everything at our disposal, our access, right? More so than your parents that survived the war.
Yeah.
But yet there's anxiety, there's depression, there's isolation, there's higher cases of it being an introvert. I'm just trying to figure out like how it came to be. Like, how did we get to this point in society? A lot of people say, it had to do with like dating apps and like the overstimulation, right? And there's like too much selection, which I believe, it could be like, oh, there's always someone on the way, right? Like, let me not invest in this one person right away, right?
Yeah.
But no, I just bring it up because when I was watching your film, there was just a lot of questions that came to my mind. Obviously, your film touches on a whole subject matter that was really cool. It was about a man becoming a man, right? In the right sense, and that's what was really heartwarming. But it did bring up the subject of it's just a thing. Like, even the way you hyped up the film, I know you were like speaking on self-awareness. He's a virgin, and like because everyone hears that word and they're like, holy shit, what? And I don't know. The prevalence that society has on that word. I wonder if society takes any responsibility into getting to that point.
Yeah. I think it's evolution. I think we're constantly growing as a society. We have to go. Humans are very stubborn. They have to like prick themselves to learn a lesson. I think us as a collective. And I think, we had institutional religious systems, which were pretty corrupt. They're like...
Tall boy.
Good. Tall boy represent. Yeah.
Tall boy. We had religious institutions, which were like political parties ruling over the world for a long time. And then you had liberal free thought and Nietzsche and all those guys that brought in liberalism and like freedom of thought, which gave birth to the Industrial Revolution in the 20th century, and then the Informational Revolution, and all the smart people became not religious. And now we're coming back to a full circle moment where, and I'll get into this because I'm working on this with my pops, but like spirituality and science are now being proven not to be mutually exclusive. And we're coming full circle to this point where it's like intellectual thought and spiritual thought are coming to a culminating point of technology now with quantum physics. And, there's crazy things happening in Russia and East Asia.
Yeah, so speaking of that, I want you to talk about that because you mentioned something to me about 4 or 5 weeks ago about a particular spiritual place there that you wanted to like bring a bunch of people to.
Yeah. So basically, my dad is a journalist. He's been publishing this magazine called Tesla Magazine for a long time. It was discontinued a few years ago, but he had all the top Tesla scientists and Yale professors, Harvard, writing articles for him. I don't know how familiar you guys are with like Nikola Tesla.
Yeah, for sure.
A lot, he was in Toronto.
Yeah.
Ontario,
Yeah, he is considered the greatest inventor and mind of modern human history. And he was, people ask Albert Einstein what's it like being the smartest person in the world. He said, I don't know, ask Nikola Tesla.
Yeah, that's a famous quote. Yeah.
So he was out there. And he is the father of electricity, of light, of wireless communication, of radio, everything, like all the technology we use. He discovered. I don't want to say created because
Godfather of invention.
Godfather of technology and power.
Yeah.
And,
shout out to Elon Musk, man.
Yeah, and he put a lot of people are waking up to the work of Tesla because Elon named his company. I don't agree with his thoughts on Tesla, but he likes Edison. Edison exploited Tesla. Edison used Tesla as a slave, and Edison was a hardline capitalist that knew how to make money. But Tesla came from this small village in Austria-Hungary, modern Croatia. He came from a Serbian family. He had telegraphic memory, so he knew every scripture of the Bible. His father was an Orthodox priest. Wow. His mother taught him every hymn and every verse, and he could recite everything on command. You could tell me this verse in this book of the Bible. He's just like, and like he, at the age of 9, he went on top of a mountain. And they talk about how he downloaded like all this light showed up in the sky, and like as of the age of 9 is when he had his powers. Wow. So he would close his eyes and he said it was like black and green, kind of like the Matrix. Yeah. And he would see a vision, and he'd see humanity in the future and electricity and all this thing, and he like blinks and it's like the 1880s. Nice. And then he moved to America with no money. and he knew he had to meet Edison. So he went up to Edison. He's like, Mr. Edison, I can make better systems for you. I can help you perfect this light bulb. He's like, Mr. Tesla, if you can do this for me, I'll give you $50,000. And at that time, that's like $1 million.
That's in a movie. That's in a movie. Yeah.
And then after he grinded for him for like nothing, basically for like a year or two, and then he like fixed his whole system. And he's like, Mr. Edison, I've established these patents, this, and this. Here you go. Would you be able to pay out that $50,000? He's like, oh, Mr. Tesla, you don't understand our American sense of humor. Wow. And then he was just like this. So then he went to this place called Westinghouse. And that's where he discovered alternating current, which actually came to him in Budapest on a walk one day. And he had to draw it out in the sand. But it took him about 10 years to manifest it. And he's like, alternating current, it just keeps going. Whereas Edison's current, DC current, direct current, is just like direct power station into something. But alternating current just keeps going forever. And then you either switch it on or off. That's why we have light switches. But the electricity is never ending. So there's always power.
Yep.
And it's in a loop. So he's like, this can power the world. So then he powered, one of the first places he powered was Niagara Park's power plant. Yep. Once humanity starts understanding the world in terms of vibrations and frequencies, that's when we elevate to the next stage of civilization.
Nem, you're a very knowledgeable guy, to be honest, and I learned a lot, especially from Nikola Tesla. It's been a pleasure to have you on the podcast. And,
thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, looking forward to learning so much more.
Looking forward to working with you guys.
100%. For sure. We're going to do something. We're going to do something big.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks again, guys, for watching, and
that's the move.